Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the session this morning. Wow, we've got a whole group of people here today, and that's amazing that so many people are interested in road treks, and some of you are on the West Coast. We appreciate you getting up early to join us, and we want to keep it fairly informal today, but yet we're going to allow our friends from Mobilife in Kitchener, a very popular RV dealer in southwestern Ontario. And we're so glad to have Jeff and Chris here. Jeff has been with Mobilife for over 20 years. He's one of their road trek technicians there with a wealth of experience. So I'm sure that he will be a big resource to those of us today who have the road treks. And Chris also has over 20 years experience coming from road trek. He spent, I think he told me 19 years with road trek. So he's very familiar with the factory side of things. And then when Heimer bought out Road Trek, Chris left there and came over to Mobilife. So Chris kind of looks after the parts and accessory side of it. Jeff is the technical side of it. So between the two of them, we got a really super tag team today when it comes to Road Trek information. So I'll let them introduce themselves a little bit more and ask Chris and Jeff to carry on. As I mentioned, if everybody can stay on mute, that would be great. And then at some point during the session, when we have a little bit of a pause, we'll invite anybody to come on by touching their space bar and asking their question. And you can also put your questions in chat. So Chris and Jeff, so pleased that you're taking time to be with us today. And we'll turn it over to you folks to share some of your road trek wisdom.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Yes, I started, just a bit of history. I started with Home and Park in the mid-90s. And I started out in production, worked my way through, became a department floater, then into service and warranty, where I spent most of my life with Road Trek, Home Park, and then Road Trek, and then Erwin Heimer until the Erwin Heimer went under. So that's my background in the road trek side of it. And now I'm with Mobilife RV here in Kitchener. I look after booking service appointments and parts, sourcing out parts, trying to find replacement parts because a lot of the parts used on the older road treks are no longer available. So we're trying to find places to either buy them or source them out to. As to Mobilife itself, they've been a road trek service center for over 30 years. Which is quite something. So there's a wealth of knowledge here. So this is something which is exciting to me. I'm passionate about road treks. And there's a few others that I used to work with. You'll see us once in a while popping up on groups and just put in, give us some guidance as to some of the questions that people have, challenges people have. One of the things to bear in mind, if you do live in Ontario, with all the service stuff going on, if you want to come in and visit us in January and February, if COVID allows us to do that, but presuming that we can, Mobilife is willing to give you like $25 off the labor rates for any service work. So that's something, if you live in Ontario and you want to pop in and you need some service work doing, give us a buzz and we can definitely see about getting you in. Jeff will most likely be the technician working on it. One of the exciting things which we're doing is in the newer vehicles, we're doing ODI servicing. So the ODI is one of the newer heating systems. It comes in a diesel, propane, and electric options, and but it has a coolant that runs the system, and we now offer that as a coolant flush because it has to be replaced every 2 years. We also, in conjunction with KS2 and Road Trek's specifications as to what they require, we do lithium rework. So we are wiring the newer coaches to the latest configurations, doing all the reprogramming that's required under the directive of KS2 and Road Trek. We also install solar powers onto vehicles, and so that's a little bit about Mobilife and a little bit about myself. Yeah.
Morning, everyone. Like Doug said, I've been at Mobilife for pretty much 22 years now. I'm pretty sure I've seen a couple of you already, I can notice. Like Chris said, we're trying to keep the product and availability for some of the older vehicles, as well as working on the new stuff. So glad we could be here today with you, and we can fire away some questions.
The battery trays and trays in the new vehicles, this is one of the things I want to put out there, this emphasize. These are things that are no longer available. So one of the things that Jeff and myself have been working on is with vendors to actually find companies that will make us parts of it. So we have parts coming in from manufacturers, we have other components coming in from other areas. So we're actually going to start manufacturing some of these trays in 2021 and putting them out there, because the original supplier will not make them anymore. So that's one of the things that we were relating to, that it's exciting stuff that we can provide out there. Let me start on, say, winterizing and spring. So in the fall, before you get into those around the freezing point, even if you're going to be going up into the mountains, so if you're somewhere in the US and you're planning on making a trip through the mountains and it's going to be cold below around the freezing point, you definitely want to look at winterizing prior to making that trip. It's the cost of winterizing fluid as against the cost of replacement parts and someone installing those parts, it way outweighs the benefit of actually doing it. The other thing, if you're looking at winterizing and putting the vehicle away, is to service the vehicle itself. So everything that moves on it. So you've got a battery tray, take the battery tray out, slide it out, clean everything up inside of it, re-lubricate it, make sure the battery terminals are clean, the battery's charged in good condition, and then put it away. The generator, make sure the generator's had a recent service, the oil level's okay, the air filter's okay. The other part of the generator and the automotive stand idle for a length of time. So especially on the generator, at least once a month, you need to run that generator at least 1 hour with at least a 50% load. So go cook a dinner in your microwave and for half an hour, or sorry, for an hour, and run that generator. What it does is it pulls new gas into the generator itself. It keeps the generator running in good condition. It's better, an ounce of prevention is well worth it. Just keeps the generator running in better condition. Clean your RV inside and out. So by keeping it clean, it's easy to see if there's an issue. And especially like on the inside, if you're going to park it away, you want to make sure you've cleaned it up well on the inside. You don't want to be encouraging any visitors while you've got it laid up for the winter time. By the way, if you are having that problem, there are lots of products out there. There's a new one which we were laughing at yesterday, actually. It's a bucket, a rodent system, and it's new to us this year. And someone had phoned in, and as Dan was taking the phone call, he actually watched a mouse walk up and jump into the bucket. And he says, I'm telling you this, it's unbelievable, it's working, I'm watching it work. So there's all sorts of alternates out there already for that. Another big one is moisture. If you're prone to getting moisture in the vehicles, there's a stuff that you can put in the vehicles to reduce the moisture content. So that's in the fall time. If you got an awning, before you put your awning away, open it up, make sure it's well cleaned. You got all the leaves and debris out of the awning itself. The moving parts of the awning, you want to shoot those with a lubricant. So like a silicone, clear silicone type lubricant, and make sure you get all those lubricated before you put it away for the winter. In the springtime, obviously you're going to de-winterize the system. The freshwater system, you want to flush it. Some people want to sanitize things. There's lots of stuff out there about how to do that. And then you'll make sure you don't have any rodent damage. Charge your batteries up again, ready for the season. The other thing is to operate and run everything to make sure everything's running in tip-top condition. The last thing you want to do is head out on the road and all of a sudden find something's not working because of something happened over the wintertime when it was in storage. Test your appliances. Make sure the appliances are burning properly. It's recommended to you go in and get a gas test done. This is making sure that nothing has happened to the system over the wintertime. I've just had a customer in Virginia where a squirrel or a rodent chewed through one of his propane lines. So, it happens, unfortunately, but it's well worth doing that before you head out on the road, that you know got a good functioning system. Also, testing the system shows that, part of when they're doing the test is the technicians will look and see, make sure the appliances are burning correctly. So, that's always, oil changes, if you haven't done it on the generator, also your automotive side of it, make sure you get that done. Tire pressures, AC filters and screens, make sure you get those nice and clean. And as to the rest of the appliances, you should have appliance manuals. If not, Google is your best friend. If you Google your appliance, put in the information about the model number, you can download the manuals. In the manuals, it will tell you what the maintenance required on them is. The other thing which I want to emphasize, that there is a big difference between RV service and automotive service. So Mobilife is an RV service center. So we service the RV components of the RVs, not the automotive. So if you have an issue with the running gear, steering, suspension, the automotive engine, that's something that would be addressed with an automotive mechanic. That's the difference between the two of them. So, shall I continue on my list?
We've got some questions here. One to Jeff from a technical point of view. It's kind of a two-part question. Someone in Seattle, where they rarely go below 32 degrees, asking if they should winterize or not worry about it. And the second part of the question is, do you recommend that you just add the RV antifreeze to the system, or some people blow out their lines and don't put the antifreeze in so they don't have residual taste in the spring? So from a technical point, Jeff, what do you think?
As far as winterizing, you never know what the temperature is going to do. So we do recommend anytime you have a chance of going below freezing level that the unit is winterized. We, as a dealer, will not blow out lines. We've had problems with toilet valves not draining all of it off, and we replace a large amount of toilet valves because of the water that pools in the bottom of the valve. So we just strictly do it with the RV antifreeze, and then we sanitize in the spring.
Okay, and maybe you could share with people then the proper method to sanitize their tanks. I'm guessing at least once a year, maybe twice, with either vinegar or some other cleanser or Javix. Do you have any way you do that?
I've heard it using a quarter cup, half cup of vinegar. I've also heard people using Javix, putting that in mix. It's got to be well diluted into like a quarter cup into 2 or 3 gallons of water, running it through the system. Once either one of them is still going to get that aftertaste. So once you've actually run that through and got it through the whole system, then at that point in time, you're going to run multiple tanks of just water through, just to flush everything out and get rid of it all.
Do you recommend that whatever you're using, vinegar or Javix, do you have to leave that sitting in the lines for a certain period of time, or is just running it through and then flushing it enough?
Just running it through and flushing it. If you're in an area where you have really hard water, some people will add Calgon. You find that in your laundry aisle. Your areas where you got hard water, you don't have a softener, they'll add some of the Calgon into the system. Follow the instructions for that. I forget what the recipe is on the Calgon. But again, you want to make sure once it's run through the system, that it's well flushed out and out of the system. The other thing to remember is your faucets all have strainers on them. So it's well worth popping those strainers off. They just, where the water actually comes out, just unscrew those. Inside you'll see any debris or anything like that, and your water filter as well. On the earlier vehicles, the water filters are underneath the vehicles and the tanks. The newer vehicles are closer up to the pumps.
Okay, thanks. Another technical question, Jeff. Frank, do you want to come on and ask your question about air conditioning? Just push your toggle button there on your space bar if you're there.
Okay.
If you're on.
Yeah. The generator, when it starts, when it goes to kick in the compressor, it really kicks in hard. And I'm afraid the generator, it's a 2003 200.
Generator, air conditioner.
Or the air conditioner is hard when it goes to kick in. I'm afraid it's not going to work sometime. This is a generator in the back unit. Air conditioner, sorry. And I'm just wondering if that air conditioner is easy to replace before it does completely break down.
So I would just ask, which air conditioner do you have? Do you have the Dometic Cool Cat, or do you have the Fetters?
I have the Fetters.
You have a Fetters, and you're in a Dodge, right?
No,
Yes.
Chevy.
It's a Chevy. The back panel on the roof actually unscrews.
Yep, so those are quite simple to replace. We do have an option for those. We were finding an LG, I believe they were an 8,000 BTU. We take the cover off from the outside and change it all from the outside as well.
How expensive is it? It's glued to the sides, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So there is quite a bit of work to get the unit out by cutting all the caulking that's holding it in. But once it's out, you just clean it up, clean everything, put your new air conditioner back in. We found that the LG is a very, very similar measurement to the Fetters air conditioner, and it fits and works quite well. Now,
Jeff, do you want to just add about the fins in the back, Jeff? Because I understand with the LG replacement, you have to extend those fins.
Yeah.
So maybe you can share the importance of those fins fitting well.
Yeah, so what you need to do with that, as Doug said, you need to extend the fins to direct the warm air out the back of the van, and your fresh air comes in the side so that you're not drawing back in the air from the air conditioner that it's putting out.
What's the cost labor-wise for, you're looking at 3-4 hours or more?
Yeah, you're going to be around the 3 or 4 hour mark.
Plus the cost of the whichever air conditioner you go to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I do not have any of the air conditioners in stock. We did sell the last one. I have to wait. We've had luck finding them at the local Home Depot. I think they run anywhere from $400 to $500 for the one that we use.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, thank you. Another question here. Catherine, I'll have you come on if you want to just push your space bar to talk with regard to your Suburban furnace.
Okay. My question was around the Suburban propane furnace. I have noticed that the propane flame is burning much more orange than blue, and I've heard that's not a good thing. I did use some air and blow out as much dust as I could from the outside vents, and I'm wondering what else needs to be done.
So to that, there's a couple things. One would be you need to have the proper operating pressure from the regulator coming to the appliance. Secondly, you could pull the burner assembly out, clean the burner assembly. Most of the time, the burner has small slots all the way down it. Those tend to, with lack of use, they tend to get a rust buildup inside of them. So we tend to take that out, clean that all on a wire wheel, blow everything out, vacuum out the combustion chamber, and then put everything back together. Now, with that, there is a gasket kit that also always has to be replaced when you pull the burner out of the furnace. So keep that in mind.
Okay. Is there a good resource for that gasket kit?
Yeah, we stock them. It's a standard Suburban. I'm sure you can find it online as well.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, and we've got a question from Gary about leaving the RT plugged in for the winter. Go ahead, Gary.
Good morning, everyone. I'm just wondering for at least for my 210 2012 unit, has the 750 watt trip light charger converter inverter, and I find it's convenient to just plug it into the house normal 120 AC, and that charges the batteries and keeps them topped up. Just wondering how reasonable that is to just leave it literally for the whole winter that way, or plug it in for a week and then let the batteries rest for a week and just alternate. Any comments from Jeff on recommendation that way?
Yeah.
So, yeah, let me address that one. The plug in the coaching, you can definitely leave it plugged in. Do you have a separator or an isolator on yours?
Separator.
Separator. So what it will do, it will look after the automotive battery as well. So leaving it plugged in, it will just sit there and look after itself for the wintertime. A lot of customers actually have done that over the years. No issues at all.
Excellent. And a second quick question, if you're familiar with in the 2012, that particular trip light, is it compatible with lithium, or if someone was to upgrade to lithium batteries from AGM, they would have to be looking at also replacing the trip light?
Yeah, as far as that goes, you really have to watch the lithium charge rate compared to a standard lead acid or an AGM battery. I do not believe that that trip light would be compatible with the lithium battery. You would have to phone trip light. Now, they are excellent to deal with. Their customer care line, anytime I phone them to deal with it, are great. So it might be a good question just to direct exactly to that.
Okay, thanks very much.
No problem.
One quick comment. If you're going to get into any appliance work, it's highly recommended that anything should be done by a technician who knows what they're doing. Taking appliances apart to try and fix them, you've got to be careful about what you do. Make sure it's got to be done properly. That's where the RV technicians come in. We're all licensed to work on propane systems, so that's part of the knowledge base that we have to have before we're allowed to touch the RVs. So just throwing that point out there.
One question that comes up sometimes is people misunderstand the legislation with regard to having propane tanks checked every 5 years, 10 years, whatever. And based on, I have a copy of that legislation, and based on my interpretation and what I've been told, is that in a road trek where the tank is a fixed unit, there is no legal requirement to have that inspected or certified periodically. That legislation refers more to the propane tanks that are not permanently attached to a vehicle. And I mean, obviously, from a safety point of view, each can choose for themselves if they want to get their system checked regularly or not. But from a legislation point of view, I think there's some misunderstanding about that. And people have spent a lot of money getting a tank checked because they were told it was the law, but in fact, it isn't the law if it's a fixed tank. Could one of you just comment on that?
So, yeah, so the onus is being pushed back on the technicians that fill the propane tanks and on RV technicians at dealerships. So if an RV technician, if a technician at a fill station sees a tank that he's uncomfortable with filling, then at that point in time, he would recommend that tank has to be inspected, tested, and either reinstalled or replaced. The same when you come in here. That's why we, it's good practice just to have your RV into the dealership once a year, have them do a quick once over, check the propane systems. We're not about throwing money at an appliance if it doesn't need replacing. Quite often you can just touch something up and we're good to go. But if it does need to be replaced, then that's where our expertise comes in. We'll see something, and if necessary, put a new tank into it.
We got Cynthia here with a question about storage of her rig inside.
I'm just wondering with the batteries, because this is the first year I've had one in the winter. If I'm storing it in a heated garage, can I just leave the batteries in there?
So as long as the batteries aren't going to see below freezing temperatures, I would say that they would be fine. It is generally a good practice, like we have just said, to keep the unit plugged in if possible to charge those batteries up, because they will run down just due to a parasitic draw, your atmospheric draw on those batteries. So as long as you're not going to see cold weather inside there, you should be fine to leave the batteries in.
Okay. No, yeah, I have it in a heated storage facility, so.
Yeah, if you can charge them every once in a while, that would be great.
Okay.
Okay, we got another question from Richard with regard to recharging his air conditioner. Come on, Richard, and you can ask your question, please.
Hi, how you doing, guys?
Hey.
I have a 210 Popular, has a cool cat in it. And last summer or the summer before, I noticed that it wasn't cooling as much. Is there any way to recharge that refrigerant?
On the Dometic Cool Cat, I believe there is no way. It is a completely sealed system on that.
And another question I had is regarding the battery trays you had mentioned you're getting.
Yeah.
Again, an 07 210 Popular battery tray is starting to deteriorate.
Yep.
I've used fluid film to try to prevent it, but it's still starting to break apart.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any 210 Popular battery trays?
We will be getting, we're working with a manufacturer right now to have everything redesigned and made off of drawings. We've had countless meetings with the owner trying to figure out when to go ahead, because we have to buy so many of them at once to make it worth our while. And like Chris said, there is a bunch of components that are going to go together with that. So we have to sort of get everything in a row, but we will have that 210 battery tray, as well as the side storage ones at the rear.
Okay.
If you go to the Mobilife website, Mobilife RV, M-O-B-I-L-I-F-E, just like down below here.
Right.
And then go to the parts and Roadtrek parts. And then in the search, type in tray. You'll see the trays that are coming up, and you'll see there's a comment in there that they're coming soon. And if you would like to pre-order, you can do that pre-ordering. Actually, within 2 hours of putting that comment up on the website, actually I had the customer pre-order a battery tray.
Oh, okay, good.
So the original manufacturer, I did contact them, and they're not interested because we can't order the volume they're looking at. They're looking at us ordering skids and skids of battery trays. That's why we had to go with a different route to find if someone's willing to build us smaller batches. And as Jeff said, the other components we have to bring in from all over North America, and then we actually have to start becoming the manufacturer in assembling them at the end. So.
Okay.
And as well, we are looking at having them built out of stainless steel as well.
Yeah.
So they'll be of a higher quality.
Will you guys install them also?
Oh yeah.
Yep,
for sure.
absolutely.
Okay, Michael has a question about his own generator.
Yeah, I have a RS Adventurous 2008, and I've had nothing but trouble with that microlight, Onan microlight generator. And several of my friends, similar experience. I would just love to take it out and get rid of it. This year, Onan has one. It's Cummins Onan now.
Yes, that's correct.
And it's getting great reviews online. It's what they're putting in Class Bs now, currently. And it looks like it's spec'd out pretty similarly. And I've gotten quotes on it, but it's like an 8-week wait time. So my question is this going to be a swap? Can I just have someone remove the old one, put in the new one, reused? Because I want that remote switch inside to work, of course. You know, by the way, it's the LP.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I realized that. As soon as you said Sprinter, I knew it was LP. When Onan at the time, before they became Cummins Onan, they did a generator swap on the 2800 model as well. The footprint changed slightly. So to make that change from the old to the new, you had to do an adjustment to the bracketry. But apart from that, it would go straight in. I haven't seen the new propane one. I'm presuming that if it's spec'd very similar, it may need a bracketry change. The propane system is definitely there to put that in place. So I would be excited to see one and see. If you're looking for information on that, if you go to www.cummins.com, www.cummins.com, you can link into there. You can find your service centers, you can find your dealers, and contact one of them. They're tell them exactly what you've got in there and that you're looking at doing this. And I'm sure they'd be more than happy to accommodate you.
Thank you.
So just hitchhike onto that. Chris had mentioned to me that they don't repair Onan generators there, but there's a Onan dealer just down the road that does. So they're quite handy in order to help you facilitate Onan repairs with their friend just down the road. There's another good Onan repair depot near me in Elmer, Ontario. So at least in southwestern Ontario, we're covered with a couple good Onan dealers. Okay, question of quick one from Gary again. Go ahead, Gary, about the air conditioning.
I'm just curious for when you mentioned about the swap with the $400 or $500 LG unit. I would be surprised if the LG incorporates a heat pump, and if it doesn't, and you have a newer unit such as my 2012 that has the CoolCat with built-in heat pump capability, what happens to the thermostat? Do you need to replace it as well? So just looking to the future as to what will happen to units like mine when that combination AC heat pump needs replacing.
So he was talking, I believe the gentleman that was talking earlier was talking about the Fetters unit only, which doesn't have a heat pump. The Dometic CoolCat is still available from Dometic. It's used in all kinds of trailers. The thermostat, if it was an analog thermostat, the new ones are now a digital that have to be swapped out with it. But the unit itself is still available.
Is the unit fairly serviceable, or when it fails, it's kind of like throw it away and get a new one?
Yeah, so the switching valve, the reversing valve that's in it cannot be replaced. So if you've got no heat or no cool, it's take it out, swap it, throw it out.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem.
So Jeff, that begs another question: is if somebody has a Fetters unit, can a heat pump be put in as a replacement rather than the LG, or that's not practical?
No, it would take so much rework to the body of that to get it. And I don't think there's even enough height there in the older Dodges to fit that.
Okay.
When I was looking underneath, my water line, as it comes through the rear fender, is broken off flush with the rear fender. My freshwater line, as you know, it's on the back of that. It's on the back door.
The fill hose.
Right. So yeah. My question is that accordion style flexible hose, will that pull out of the fender if I remove the inlet, or is that attached somehow?
No, it sort of runs down behind. What I find easiest is to remove the light on the lower right-hand side inside the door there.
Okay.
And you pull that wall panel forwards and you can sort of feed it out through there.
Okay, great. I haven't gotten to it yet. It's, like you, it's too cold to lay on the ground and pull that thing out right now.
Yeah, no thanks.
And then one last question, and I so appreciate this information. Pinstriping for the older road treks. I can find the decals, no problem, but I'm getting ready, as I'm said, I'm restoring this 98. I'm going to be painting it, and I can't seem to find pinstriping anywhere.
Yeah, the pinstriping has always been a challenge. First of all, to get the Roadtrek pinstriping, you have to order them in en masse. If they're not cheap, I mean, you're looking at thousands of dollars to order them, and then they have to be stored in air conditioned, climate control. Otherwise, they deteriorate quite quickly. So, what I've always recommended customers do is go into a body shop that have a catalog of pinstriping, decaling, that type of stuff, and flip through their catalog and see what's available, and then choose something that would go with your vehicle.
Super. Hey, you guys have been very helpful. Again, Merry Christmas.
Okay. Rick, if you go online, there is a decal company that produces Roadtrek decals and striping. It's not identical to the original striping, but it is quite nice and fancy. And there's been discussion on the forum about that. So if you can't find it with a Google search, do a search on the forums about striping and Roadtrek decals. There's a company that makes those, and there's a variety. None of them are exactly the same as the original, but there are some that are adequate depending on what appeals to you. Sue Gypsy, she's got a question about her red valve on the city water intake.
I have a 2000 190 Popular Dodge, and the red valve, the city water hookup, it doesn't seem to matter which way I turn that valve. I always fill up the freshwater tank. Is
So-
my valve broken?
It does sound like it's leaking by. Does the tank fill quickly, or just you'll notice over like a couple hours, all of a sudden you've got water coming out the door?
I can hear it.
Okay, so yeah,
I can
the
hear
valve
it go
likely-
in.
It's likely that the O-ring inside that little valve is just fallen off and it's allowing water to run through.
Okay, now let's say it was working.
Yeah.
Which way? Because it's new. This one's new for me.
Okay.
Which way is that valve supposed to be just for city water hookup? Is it supposed to be straight across, like inline, or across it?
Across it. If it's in line with that, that's allowing water to go into the tank.
Okay, so across
Yes.
is for city water only.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Now I have one more quick question.
Let's have it.
If I wanted to change my faucet in the kitchen, is there an easy way to do it, or do you have to tear out a refrigerator or the burners or the sink in order to get to the connections underneath?
No, you can normally get to it. I've never taken a refrigerator out to do any of that. Yeah, it's tricky. You got to be a contortionist and get yourself.
Because you can't get in, you can't reach through the shelving. I mean, it's just, my arms are too short for one thing.
Yeah, I replaced quite a few faucets. I just go in from the front, and like you said, it's not comfortable or nor easy, but we have a special tool that you can get up there and take those faucet connections off.
That's cheating.
No, that's why he's a technician.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
No problem.
Doug, can
Okay,
you-
somebody was going to say something. Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
There's been a lot of questions about the FedEx air conditioners. If you send me an email at roadtrekparts@mobilife.on.ca, so roadtrekparts@mobilife.on.ca, and say you need instructions for a FedEx air conditioners, I have instructions I can send you on how to switch them out on a 170, 190, and 200 model.
Okay, thanks for that, Chris. The next one I see down here is from Barbara. Are you there, Barbara? You're talking about air in your system.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm new to this, and I have a 2000 Dodge 170. And like someone mentioned, the fresh water is on the gate in the back. So when I open that up, there's nothing in the gate, first of all, in the inlet. There's no plug or anything like that. It's just open, and you shut the gate and it closes off. I want to know if that's standard or if there's something I should have in there. And then the second question is about air. I completely emptied my tank and then filled it back up through that inlet, and I can hear the air, and sometimes the water shoots back out at me, and if I stop, and then it'll take more water. And now I thought my water pump was bad because it stopped working, but now someone on the site had mentioned to me that it could be air in the water pump, and I just don't know how to get rid of it because I have the pump on, I turn all the faucets on, I get a lot of air and gurgling and a little water, but it never completely clears. So that's like a couple of questions in one. Thanks.
So as first part of that, yes, there is supposed to be a little red plug that goes, or an orange plug that goes into the filler hose, the inlet, when you're not filling it. Excuse me. Second to that, as far as you're saying that the pump won't draw water from the tank?
Correct.
So we get a lot of this, and what it is mainly is lack of use. The pump loses its prime pretty much. There is supposed to be a self-priming pump, but they do have to draw that water up from the bottom. Some of the times on the older ones, there is a filter down underneath right at your tank. Check the filter to make sure that it's not plugged. If it isn't plugged, the chances are that it's lost its prime. Chris and I, there's 2 or 3 different ways that you can try to get this pump to reprime itself. I'm going to let Chris answer the one, and then I'll I'm just gonna grab a part and show you how I do it.
Great.
So one quick comment on the fill. If the fill line has moved down, you can actually end up with a dip in it. So when you're filling it, you'll hear it gurgling as it's going over that dip in the fill line. So that's a thing. So as Jeff said, there's two different ways of priming the pump. The one fashion is to actually hook up the city water fill, and you're going to have your check fill valve crossways, and you're going to run water to everywhere in your appliance. Now, if your water heater is empty and it's in bypass, you can just leave that in bypass. That's fine. So you're going to run water and have it coming out the hot and cold of all your faucets and your toilet. That's going to put water throughout the system. At that point in time, if you turn the city water off, your hose connection off, turn the pump on. Sometimes that's enough to actually draw water into the pump and get the water running through your pump.
Okay.
The way that I do it, because I see so many of these things in a year, is that what I'll do is I'll go to the water pump itself and I'll disconnect the inlet side of the water pump. I will hook up just a hose with a fitting on it, and I will put a funnel in the end, and I'll fill it up with a bottle of water until the hose is full. Then I'll turn the pump on and open a faucet and just blow through this fitting, and it will all of a sudden start sucking water. Have a pail nearby that you can just dunk this into so that the pump comes up to pressure and shuts off when you close the faucet. And then if you disconnect this and hook the line back up, you should solve your problem. That's the easiest way that I do it in service.
You also mentioned about the pump running, not shutting off.
Yeah, I was going to say, one thing to say to that is, you're in a 190 Dodge, you said?
170.
170? Same thing. So go into your driver's side storage compartment and make sure that the valve that the other lady was asking questions about is straight up and down and not in line. What'll happen is if that is open and it's allowing water, it will just circulate water from the pump back to the tank, from the tank back to the, and it just makes a loop. So make sure that the valve is straight up and down.
Oh, but then won't it, I actually did that and I flooded my Roadtrek because I had already filled the tank when I did that. I had it, oh wait, you're saying to keep it straight across. I had it straight.
Make sure that it's straight up and
Yeah,
down, because that, if it's not, the pump will never shut off.
It will never shut off. I'm talking about not connected to water. I have it
right,
not.
You're drawing from the fresh water tank.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah, you're drawing
so
from the fresh water tank. So if that valve is in the open position,
yeah,
all it does is circulate the water from the tank to the pump back to the tank. So you just have to make sure that it's straight up and down, and that closes that.
I don't know if you, let me move up here a minute. So
that
by
might be
turning that
the
valve.
So
Yeah,
if
most
this
of
is,
the time that's what it is.
if this is your tank, by having the valve in the wrong position, it's drawing off the tank, going through the pump, and then back into the tank. So you're just going around in a loop. You're not pressurizing your system. So that's why the pump keeps running.
Thank you very much. I flooded my Roadtrek by having that straight up.
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay, Harish, yes, I think your question did get dropped, so go ahead.
Hang on. Chris, you had mentioned in answer to Gary's question whether he had an isolator or a separator, and you said that when you're plugged in, if you have a separator, both batteries, the house battery and the engine battery, get charged. But if you have a isolator, does the engine battery not get charged, Chris?
Not when you're plugged in, no. The charging goes, the isolator depends whether you have a Chevy or a Dodge.
It's a Dodge.
The Dodge one has 3 posts on it. So the power going in goes in on the middle terminal and goes out on the outside terminals.
Right.
The outside terminals cannot feed in. So the alternator hooks up to the middle, and then the middle, because it's got diodes in it, will only allow charge going out to the outside posts. One goes to automotive, the other one goes to the coach battery.
But if you are plugged
the
in,
Chevy works the same way, except has a small extra terminal, which you don't need to worry about.
So just to clarify, if you are plugged in and you had an isolator, then only the house battery gets charged, not the engine battery. Am I right?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
We'll go on then to Gary Taylor. He's got a propane question. Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, I have a 2016 CS Adventurous with the Aldi propane, and I'm wondering about the fluid change, about bringing it into you guys. And I'm wondering about, first of all, how long does it take? What is your hourly rate? And does the $25 discount in January and February apply to this? Thanks.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so it would apply to that, the $25 anytime in January or February. The CS Adventurous, I believe you need about 5 gallons of the, it's just shy of 5, but we give you the rest of it. I think it runs at about $42 a gallon for that. And it takes, Chris and I, we had one where they hadn't done it properly. So they mixed the fluid, and what it does is it forms a crystal inside of the Aldi system. So we've been taking everything apart and flushing it all first, taking all the check valves out, and then putting it all back together. It typically takes me about 3 to 4 hours.
Okay, back to the red handle discussion, Jeff.
Yeah.
I guess there's some confusion. Gene, do you want to clarify what your question is about the placement of the handle in regular situations?
Well, just when there was discussion, I think it was Sue's question, she said when the red handle is across the inlet pipe, that's only for city water, and I think that's not correct. I think the red handle is across for both city water and for using your water pump. You don't have to move the red handle at all unless you want to fill your tank. Is that correct?
So which van do you have?
I have a 97 Dodge 190.
So if you are hooked up to city water and that valve is not straight up and down.
Well, it's not, it's crossways to the inlet. Up and down doesn't apply in the way it's.
So yours might be different. Somebody may have changed yours because
I don't know, but anyway, could you answer with regard to whether it's across the inlet or parallel to the inlet?
Okay, so if it's crossways, then you're going to put pressure from the city, from your city water supply, and you're going to pressurize the water lines within the coach.
Does that also allow the water pump to work if you are not hooked up to city water?
If you're not hooked up to city water, that's your pump would then work at that point as well.
Yes, that's the point I wanted to clarify.
Okay. When you put the valve in line, at that point in time, that is going to fill up your fresh water tank the same way as you went to your gravity fill on the back of the coach.
Yeah, thank you.
So what, just to repeat what Jane is pointing out, is that generally speaking, you would always leave that red handle crossways. The only time you would put it perpendicular is you want to fill your freshwater tank from the city water. Otherwise, it's always crossways, which goes back to the other question about why she's circulating water round and round. So that's the reason you leave it crossways in all cases except filling your freshwater tank from city, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Question, Danny. Go ahead, Danny.
Okay, thank you very much. I broke the cover on the freshwater fill. I have a 190 Chevy Popular, and I want to replace that cover. So when I took off the 4 screws, I want to know if you actually just pull that whole plastic piece out and the hose will have enough slack that I can remove the hose clamps.
You got it?
Yeah. So on the 200, there is a little bit of extra hose down there. Depends on how brittle that hose is not over time.
I have 190, sorry.
Sorry, 190. I have installed them. If you pull it out, there's a clamp in behind. You've also got your vent line as well. Make sure you put something onto those so they don't drop and disappear on you. because then it's a pain to fish them back out again. So yes, there typically is enough hose there, unless someone in the past has had trouble with it and they've already shortened everything up.
But is it a matter of just pulling it out and then undoing?
Yeah.
Yeah, take the 4 screws out, it will lift out a little bit. Now you're not going to have like a foot or so, you're going to have a short distance.
Like an inch or two.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no other tricks to that, or
Other than taking wall panels apart. No.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, next we have Phyllis on the, I'm guessing it's the hard start kit. Go ahead, Phyllis.
Yes, this is John, not Phyllis. She signed up, so that's okay. As many of us have, the Cool Cat air conditioner has a hard time starting with the generator, and there's been a lot of discussion about the hard start kits. And of course, the confusion is because they have a PTZ, I think they call it, which is a thermistor in the Cool Cat that helps with starting. And then they have the hard start kits, which actually have a starting capacitor. And the question is that I've seen some of the RV shows, they try to sell these hard start kits, and of course they're miraculous. And I was just curious if it really made that much difference. Is it worth doing to make the generator start more easily? So I see a sigh there.
I wouldn't recommend putting anything into that Dometic Cool Cat other than a Dometic hard start kit. If it's not a Dometic that they're trying to sell at these shows, yes, they do work, but I wouldn't recommend anything other than putting a Dometic part into it.
Well, I guess the question is the Dometics come with the PTZ device, which is not a start capacitor, okay? Right. And I guess the question is does the Cool Cat, so does Dometic actually sell an additional kit that has the capacitor?
There is.
Is it any good? Does it make much difference?
I've only seen one in the last 10 years.
Okay. So there's a lot of, because my air conditioner starts with the generator. I have to get warm up a little bit. It will start.
And then shut everything else off.
But it does start. But it's that certainly not worth doing anything further to it. But there are a lot of people out there they just aren't quite able to start the air conditioner.
Yeah.
It would be a lot cheaper to do a hard start kit than replacing the generator.
Right. Exactly. So yes, they are out there. Dometic does offer it. I think the first time we ordered it, like I said, it was probably 8 to 10 years ago, and it was nothing short of a pain to put in.
Well, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I guess the real question is, did it work?
It did work. Yeah, it solved the guy's problem.
Okay, well that's good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. The other thing is sequencing when you bring in them on. When you got your generator running, start up your air conditioner, let it get running, give it a few minutes to warm up, settle down into its mode, and then turn your other appliances back on.
By the way, go ahead.
I was going to say, if you're drawing significant power off the system already, and then try to start up your Cool Cat, then the generator hunts and struggles a little bit more. So.
That makes perfect sense. Now, I will make one comment, and that is, if you ever talk to the Dometic people, the new electronic thermostat is the most horribly designed piece of junk I've ever seen in my entire life. And the analog one was far better. I cannot imagine the guy who designed that should spend the rest of his life in hell trying to use it.
Oh yeah. I think they've had about 4 different versions of it already.
Okay, I just want to put in a short public announcement here, which I forgot to do at the start actually, and that is that Chris and Jeff want to make sure you're aware that they are in the same bubble. They work together each day. So from a COVID isolation point of view, they didn't want anybody to think they weren't respecting proper COVID protocol. So they are in the same bubble working together side by side each day. So if anybody had any concern about that, Chris and Jeff just wanted to make sure I addressed that point. So that's good.
That's next door to each other.
Yeah. So the other thing, I'm going to interject a question here, and then we'll go to Kate. Jeff, in terms of people booking their service, I know that on the website you have the ability to do that. Is that the most convenient way for someone to book service if they want it?
Yeah, that's Yeah, that works fine. If it's something any more complex than just your standard services, I would recommend it going through Chris. If you're looking for something specific, he knows the hours that a job's going to take, when we can book that in. So I would recommend, if it's something other than a standard service, just give Chris a call and he'll book you in.
Okay, very good. Now go ahead, Kate, you had a question.
I do. Some people are using crown undercoating on their vehicle. Does that cause any problems? Do you recommend it?
Yeah, I've never heard of any issues caused by rust proofing, no. And crown, yeah, I think crown's fine for it.
Got a question from James on his inverter.
Yeah, I've got a 13C 190P. I bought it new and I never tried the inverter until about a year or two or so ago. And it doesn't work, you know, the whole vehicle inverter. And I wondered, on the trip light, is there a specific switch, dip switch, that needs to be turned on, or a couple of them that I'm missing?
Have you taken the cover off the, I know they're not easy to get to, but there's 4 screws on the top, sort of where you'll see the positive and negative of the 12-volt side. Where those 2 black cords come out that says one goes into a plug that is input and one's output, have you pulled that off and see if you have voltage at that plug itself?
Now, you're talking about going into the switch?
Right at the inverter.
You're pulling the switch, inverter switch out? Is that what you mean?
No. Right at the inverter, there's a little cover where all the junction, like the junction box, where the 2 black cords go into. Have you checked that for an output?
No.
So you need a voltmeter and check that for an output. There is a reset breaker on the actual trip light inverter itself that could be tripped. And I remember a while back, there is a small dial for an adjustment on that. And I remember hers was turned to the off position.
Yeah, it should be an auto remote. The switch that's on it was set to auto remote.
Auto, oh, there is a switch on there.
There's a switch on the top of it. Should be set to auto
Auto
remote.
remote, yeah.
Auto remote.
Do you have 8 dip switches or 4 dip switches?
Oh, geez. I think I've got 8.
So as you look at the trip light with the 12 volt at the top, I believe the sequencing is down, up, down, up, up, down, down, down. It's for the dip switches. That's
Oh, now he's showing off the guy.
Oh, geez.
Oh, yeah, you're checking. I mean, this is like 8 years ago I last did one of these.
Oh, God.
I'm an old guy. My memory's not perfect.
I can't remember 10 minutes ago. Okay.
Let's go to Barbara. She's got a question about her Onan.
Yeah, on the wall where you test how much propane and everything you have, there's also the Onan generators tells you how many hours that it's used. What, how many hours is like reasonable?
The minimum you should see is 12 hours for every year. That's the bare minimum. Because as I said at the beginning, the maintenance on it, to keep the generators running in good condition, the recommendation is to run 1 hour per month with a minimum 50% load. So if you're running 75 or 80% load, that's fine. But at least 50% power load on the generator. So if your vehicle is 10 years old, 12, you're looking at 120 hours. And that's the minimum on it. So 1 hour per month.
So I have 190 hours on my generator. Is that, I mean, it's a 2000, so it's 20 years old.
It's way under hour.
Yeah.
Oh, it's under hours. So how long does it last? I mean, what's the max?
So you should have a minimum of 240 hours on that.
Okay, so that's why it's not working right now?
That's the bare minimum on it. Yes.
Okay.
You know, a lot of people have more than 400 or 500 hours on a vehicle that age or more.
Okay. Is there a maximum where you just know you're going to have to replace it?
No, as long as the generator is working fine, keep up on the servicing on it. Your own manual will tell you how often to do the oil change, the spark plug, and the air filter. It could all be done at a coming service center.
Do you have to take it out, remove it to do all of that work on it?
No, it can be done. Depends on how flexible the technician is.
Okay.
Because the generators are mounted on the later models, they're mounted underneath. So you take off the black door there, you get to the oil filter. There's a plug underneath which will get you into your spark plug. So they should be able to get it done. It's not the easiest, but it is possible. Okay, so the first question is about the Dodge steering wandering issues, stuff like that. So as I said at the beginning, we don't deal with the mechanical components. I can give you some insight into it, especially with the Dodge. The distance between the tires, front and back, is different on the Dodges. There are kits that can adjust that, but what it is when you're driving along on a road that's got ruts on it, your front wheels can be on one part of the rut and your rear wheels are a different part of that rut. So that's why you can get a bit of wandering. There's also people that have changed the front end. They put what's that?
The steering controls.
Yeah, with the steering controls, they've made some adjustments. That's through an automotive shop that's done that. The other important thing to remember is the type of tires you've got on there. If it's a stiffer wall tire, then it will not wander less than if it's a soft wall tire. So,
I think we're
down to
the one on the somebody had written in about a 2002 Chevy Popular that has intermittent power failure, where the lights go up and down while parked and under the shore power. Chris and I were bouncing a couple things off of each other, trying to figure out what that could possibly be. To me, it either sounds like something in the converter itself that's failing possibly, or a relay in the battery disconnect could be failing. That's a really odd one. Could be a battery. Yeah, it could be a battery. We'd have to really see that to figure that out, as to getting a bunch of electrical testing done on that.
Okay.
So we got another one on a leak in the back left corner of a 190. And Chris and I were talking about this one, and I'll let Chris talk to you about that because he knows how the roof goes onto the unit.
So the roof on this is lifted onto the vehicle. It's secured down, and then there's a sealant going around the drip rail. To decorate this out, where there's a metal strip that runs all the way around the van, and then there's a plastic cover that goes over it. So the two leak possibilities is, one is the drip rail, and the other one is where the screws are that are holding that trim, that aluminum molding onto the back of the vehicle. Customer has they've got like a masking tape over the top. So that masking tape can be doing two things. One, it's stopping water from going underneath and hitting the screw fasteners underneath that trim. The other one is it may be deflecting water that's coming and sending it over the drip rail, which is part of the van itself, the automotive component. So where I would start is to take off that the tape there and just introduce water onto the drip rail itself. Don't go up as high as where that decorative trim goes around. Just stay on the drip rail and see if it leaks. If it does, then at that point in time, unfortunately, you need to dig out that sealant that's there and redress it. If that doesn't fix it, and then you go higher up onto the corner of the roof and you pour water, it doesn't have to be masses of volume, and it's leaking, then that's telling us that it's the screw fasteners that have gone into the roof that are holding that aluminum trim. So I say there's that white covering on the Dodges. Unfortunately, that is going to be quite brittle this time. So you may want to warm it up with a hairdryer before you remove it off. Your closest joint is the middle of the rear roof, underneath where that little tab that says Roadtrek. Just be very careful with it. I haven't been able to source that material. I haven't seen that since about 2008, 2009, somewhere on there. So if it breaks, I'm not sure where I'd find a replacement for it.
So Chris, what you're saying then is you do not think it's going up through the seam where the fiberglass roof is attached to the metal roof that's the original part of the roof. It's not there. You think it's one of those two other places where it's leaking in?
It's one of those two places. It's either where the roof meets the van body, or it's where the screws are that holds that trim on that's securing the roof down. So start low, always start low when you're doing water testing. Put it in just to the automotive drip rail there and see if it's leaking. If it is, then unfortunately you have to dig that out and re-seal it. If that doesn't show up the leak, then you're going to go higher into where that white trim is. And if it shows up at that point, that's telling me that it's in behind where those screw fasteners are going in.
Okay, just one comment that Gene made, Chris, is that trim is available on eBay.
Okay. Oh,
Perfect.
cool. Excellent. I'll have a look on eBay.
Okay. What else you got there?
Hang on a second. I'm just making a note on that. Because if I can find from that a supplier part number, then I can possibly go back to the supplier and see if we can bulk order it. So that's a good resource. Thank you for that information. Okay. What is the best way? Oh, we did that one.
No, the best way to check. The best way to check. So there's one here about window leaks on the upper 3 windows on those vans. Those windows are my nemesis. The plexiglass early on Dodges, installing those, it is an awful job. My fingers always hurt by the end of it. I have not found a company or anybody that can put a sealant around those windows to stop them from leaking. The H molding breaks down over the time. The windows themselves tend to get stress cracks in them from just the age of them. So we've been on those early ones, we take them out, we replace the H molding, replace the entire window. On the metal framed windows on the later Dodge models, there's typically 2 places where they leak. It's either the D-seal between the van body itself and the window, which is easy to fix. You just pop the screws off from the inside and you can pop the entire window out and replace just the D-seal. The other place they leak is between the glass to the frame seal. And typically you'll see that that's an easier leak to see on the inside because you'll have staining and buildup. And for that one, you either replace the entire window, which I think we have probably the last 10 of those in existence right now. Roadtrek threw out all of that stuff when they went out of business. We managed to get our hands on a couple of them, but they're not going to be around forever. So you can actually cut the glass out of that frame and use a glass adhesive. You clean the metal frame up, clean the glass up, put it back in, reinstall the trim, replace the D-seal, and you can put that window back together.
The product used on it's the same as an automotive windshield. It's a urethane adhesive sealant. So it's the same stuff that if your windshield breaks, that they use to reinstall a windshield. I've changed water pumps, which don't work after a while. You hear the pump working, but no water. I blew the lines out to winterize. Could it be the membrane damaged on the pumps? This is on a 2017 Simplicity SRT. So this is on a Dodge ProMaster chassis. So the challenge with this one is that the water pump itself is behind the fridge. So getting in with what Jeff was saying to put that line onto the pump is a bit more of a challenge, but it is doable. Using that city water fill method to prime the pump is another way. It's I find it struggle that the membranes themselves have failed. I'm more thinking that it's the pump has lost its prime, and it's hunting to get the prime back. It's pretty unusual to see a membrane go on the pumps. They're pretty durable.
The other thing to that one, I would think it could possibly be sucking air in on the intake side of that line, and that's why the pump won't draw water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know it said that you have replaced 2 of the pumps. I've found days where Roadtrek, there's supposed to be a neoprene gasket inside the connection that goes onto the water pump. Make sure, take that off and just make sure that it's there. If it's not, it'll be drawing air on that side and could be giving you some of that problem. Those pumps are bulletproof for the most part. I don't replace many of those at all.
And right beside it is your water filter. So if you've had your water filter off to clean it, make sure the water filter is secure back on again. Otherwise, you're going to suck the air in.
Okay, I just want to acknowledge, and I see they're on here. So good to see Roger and Lynn Brucker from Ohio, AKA known as Red Rick Rover on the forums. Very knowledgeable, experienced road trekkers. So either Lynn or Roger, if you want to come on, you had a question. So good to see you here. Okay, I'll read the question then. So they're asking, could the lights issue on the 2002 Chevy be the battery switch not being turned on before plugging into shore power? This, I'm assuming this goes back to the one where the cabin lights were fading on and off. John Slaughter addressed this in his notes to the Roadtrek electrical simulator.
Yeah, I guess it could. It's hard. Electrical problems are hard to see without obviously diagnosing and having some hands-on time with the unit. I tend to lean towards a battery issue possibly, or a converter issue. Would be my two spots to check.
Okay, just to clarify, the Roadtrek electrical simulator, John made a really neat diagram, which is in the file section of the Roadtrek forum. And you go in there and you can click on different things in that diagram, and it will activate the colors in the diagram to show you the current flow depending on which switch is on or off. It's an amazing thing. So for those of us on the forum, we've likely seen it, but it's in the file section. It's a really good tutorial on the entire electrical system, and thank you for pointing that out, Lynn. There was a question we missed earlier about how do you know if you have an isolator or a separator, and you may just explain briefly, guys, the difference between the two.
Yeah, Jeff's going to just run down and grab one of each.
Okay.
The basic difference is the separator, imagine, works like a dam wall. So you got a wall, and you got the automotive battery on one side, and the charging system going to it. And the other side is the coach battery. So if the automotive battery, when it gets the full charge, it will allow it'll pull the solenoid in and allow the extra to roll over into the coach system. If you're plugged in, the coach system is going to charge. When it gets fully charged, it's going to allow the rollover in the excess to go to the automotive battery. That's basically, very simply, how a separator works. And we have one right here. This is basically what a separator looks like. These are your two power terminals. This one typically will run to your automotive battery, and this one goes to your coach systems. And that's basically how it works.
And are they on the firewall of the vehicle, or where are they usually located?
You're typically going to find them on the firewall, you're correct. And then this one here is a Dodge isolator. So on this one here, your power is fed to the middle post. So your alternator comes up and puts power onto this post. There's diodes between the center post and the outside, so it only allows flow in one direction. It won't allow flow going backwards. So this one will be hooked up. This one is going to your automotive battery. This one here will be going to your coach battery, but it cannot feed any power going backwards through here. It can only go from the center post going to the outside too. So that's basically what an isolator looks like.
Okay, good. Len, do you want to come on and ask your question about surge protectors?
Yeah, okay. I got two questions actually. Do you recommend using a surge protector with low voltage protection for shore power plugins? I've seen them like they're over $400 in Canada. So where can I get one in Ontario, and which brand would you recommend?
We don't, as a dealer, we don't really stock much of that stuff. Our parts guy, obviously, he gets them out the door. It's never a bad idea to protect your electrical system. you see low voltage situations all the time, which causes high amp draw, which causes heat, which causes wiring to melt. So yeah, I would recommend a surge guard of some sort. Yeah.
Lynn, if you check the forums, this has been widely discussed in the past. We've also had more detailed discussions in prior sessions. So if you search on the forum, you'll find recommendations there. And some RV dealers have them. If not, they're easily available online.
Okay, thank you. I got another question though. I got a 2009 and it has a steel rod underneath, okay, close to the sewage dump area. It's supposed to be used to free up the macerator. I read somewhere that you turn the handle, you push it in, and this is supposed to free up the macerator. Is this, how often would you do that? And what do you know about this?
So yeah, in theory, what it is, it's pretty much a long slotted screwdriver that's got spring loaded that you push in and you turn it so you feel it engage the end of the shaft on the macerator, and you can give it a turn. You might be able to get the thing to break loose, but 95% of the time, if it's seized up, you're not turning it with that. I end up going in and taking them apart.
Okay.
Okay, yeah,
thank you.
In theory, it's just a long slotted screwdriver.
One way to keep your macerator working wetter for you is make sure you put plenty of liquid down. If you don't have enough liquid to solids going down, it can sit in the pump and then solidify, and then the pump has hard trouble get going. As Jeff mentioned, by putting that in, it can sometimes spray it up, but most of the time, it may have already caused the damage to the pump and pulling the pump out.
Okay, Chris, you got any more questions on your list there?
I put my list away. Deal with this one?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a question about wondering why pricing is expensive compared to other sources. So one of the things we have to do is we have to look at what we're offering for what purpose. So if it's something like a catch, something that's not safety related, then we can flip something into something that is more like a clone type product. When we get into things that are more safety things, like propane systems, I have to stick with certified propane per the original design from Roadtrek. So if Roadtrek designed it with this, I have to try and replace it with that. I can't say, well, this is close to it and it may work. Unfortunately, when we do that, sometimes the original stuff costs quite a bit more. To give you an example, this year alone, we've sold we've sold out on the last of the Dodge, the 98 to 2003 propane tanks. So I have to order replacements. I could probably go and have someone make some up, maybe cheaper, but the original specifications are from Manchester tanks. So I'm actually already placed the order for Manchester tanks for those, and also for the 94 to 97 Dodge, and also for the Chevy products from 2001 to when Chevy went out of production. The unfortunate part is I have to order 15 tanks at a time. So we've got to bring those tanks in, and then when they land in Ontario, we have to go and pick them up and then bring them in. So that's why, you may find something that's aftermarket that's a little cheaper, but unfortunately, it's something that's more safety related. I have to stick with the original specifications that Roadtrek puts out there, and hence, I have to eat the cost that I'm provided with.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Barbara mentions that she doesn't see a hot water bypass on her system, 2000 Dodge 170. Was that standard to have the bypass on the hot water heater, or was that an option?
The water heaters, they all came with bypasses. In the original days, the bypass was a loop. So you'd have a water line with fittings on the end. So you would drain out your water heater, depressurize it by going to a faucet, you drain your system out. You would then disconnect the fitting on the back of the tank, and you would then take this loop and hook it up to the two water lines, and that puts you into bypass. There are kits available. We have them here where you can actually just take and hook that up and then hook a bypass line and have the valves in it, which makes it more like the modern Roadtreks.
So is there a valve on the ones that you sell? I think I saw that loop, but there's nothing to turn it on or off. You're actually having to take that piece off entirely?
The piece we have here, if you want to replace it, it has the fitting on it. So the one goes to the tank, the bottom one goes to the tank, and there's a fitting that goes between the two. And where those are, there's valves. So you turn the valves to put it into bypass mode, or you turn it and then it stays on the water heater. Jeff's just going to grab one now.
Yeah, so you've got a 2000, so you would have a valve at each end of that little short hose. You've likely got 2 valves, or in some of them there was a check valve on the top and then only 1 valve on the bottom. If you're in the 2000, you most certainly have the valves there.
Okay, great, thanks.
Any more there, Chris? I've got a couple more here as well.
I think I got to the end of my list.
Okay. Go ahead, Richard. You had a question about your isolator.
Yeah, 2007 Chevy 210 Popular. I have an isolator. Is it possible to change it to a separator so I can get the all the batteries charged at the same time?
Some rewiring.
You'd have to do some rewiring. The only one on the Chevy that would concern me was you have the 3 main terminals like on the Dodge, but you also have an exciter circuit. That's the small terminal. Is how you get that working. That would be re-engineering part of the system that's there. The later models, they did do that, but I'm not sure how they got that exciter circuit hooked in. Without the exciter circuit, the alternator doesn't make power.
Okay.
That's what that extra terminal is for.
There are numerous isolators. How do I determine which one would be best for my vehicle?
The Chevy isolator has 4 posts on it. You're looking at 150 amp. That's a spec on it. So it has to be a 150 amp isolator, and it will have the 3 large terminals, and then between the two of those terminals, just slightly below, there's a smaller terminal. Okay. That's it. That will tell you that's a Chevy one. Just a matter of thought out there. We've seen a number of Dodges coming in, and they've got small. So someone has changed out the isolators to like 110 amp alternators, 110 amp isolators. The Dodge system actually is spec'd out for 130 amps. So if you're going to change your isolator on a Dodge, make sure you got 130 amp isolator for the Dodge, 150 amp on the Chevy.
Yeah, I didn't see it on your.
Is there any problem, Chris, adding a 150 amp onto a Dodge, even though it's rated at 130?
No, you can put that on. Just make sure that it's only the 3 terminal one, not the 4 terminal one.
Did you have another question, Richard, or did that get you?
No, well, I looked on the parts website. I didn't see a 150 amp on your website, Mobilife.
I don't know that there's one in, I don't know that there's one in stock currently.
On that be.
We can check with them later.
And how often do they go bad?
I don't change a lot of them in a year, I'll tell you that. The thing that you would notice is either your engine battery is going dead, would be the #1 sign of that. And that just is, again, check it with a voltmeter to make sure that when the vehicle's off, there should be no power on the center post.
I see. Okay.
If there's power on that post, something internal has failed.
Richard, there's all sorts of information on the forum about how to test your isolator, whether it's failing or not, if you want to go back and search that.
Yeah, I'll do that. Great. Thanks.
Okay. Harish had a question going back to hot water heater bypass.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for taking the question, Chris and Jeff. My hot water bypass doesn't completely close. Is it just a question of lubricating it, or should I replace it? When I do the winterizing, there is still a little bit of pink fluid into the hot water tank. Thanks.
So you can either replace. I winterize a lot of Roadtreks in a year, and I would say 50% of them have that problem where the bypass valve doesn't completely shut off.
Okay.
It's just the valves themselves. You can take the valves and replace them. You can buy a new kit.
Yeah, okay. I'll try lubricating it and see if it
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
No problem.
Okay, Barbara, anode rod question, go ahead.
Thanks for all my questions. So I bought an anode rod and then went to put it in, and I cannot find a place for it. And I don't know if somebody put this valve on as like after it was bought, but there is a valve that I opened to get all the water out of that system, but I don't see a place to put the anode in. Do I need one?
Yeah, so it sounds like somebody has taken the anode rod out and put in some sort of a petcock drain valve or something. The water heater really does need an anode rod in it. It stops the effects of electrolysis. Instead of eating away at the tank liner itself, it eats away at the anode rod instead, and prolongs the life of the water heater tank. So yes, I would recommend that other valve system come out and an anode go in.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Betty, also, Betty, there's also a lot of discussion, including photos on the forum. And I'm aware of some photos that have been posted with little arrows and descriptions. So your anode rod goes right at the very bottom in the center, is where that drain hole is, and the anode rod should be in there. You'll see photos with descriptions in a lot of detail on the forum.
Okay, so I'm going to have to take the valve out because that's exactly where it is. And one other question about the hot water heater. When you winterize, so say I did the bypass and I used my, do you use your pump to get rid of all the water in the hot water tank first and then close the bypass and then put your antifreeze in?
No, you can just close your bypass, take the anode rod out and drain the water. You don't need your water pump for that.
Okay, so no antifreeze in there.
No, you don't want antifreeze in there.
Yeah.
The anode rod sits in the bottom of the tank. So once you depressurize the tank at a faucet, you can take this out.
Oh, wait a minute. At the bottom of the tank, it's not in.
The one at the top of the tank is your pressure relief valve, and that has to stay in place. Don't play with that.
Okay.
That's your household water heater has one of those. The pressure vessels have to have them. So at the bottom of the water heater is where you'll see this nut. I think so. What's it? Inch and an eighth.
Inch and a 16.
Inch and a 16.
Yeah,
So,
I bought one. It just is nowhere to put it because of that valve.
Look at the very bottom of the water heater. It's about this far from the bottom of the water heater, and that's where that's where the anode lives.
And Chris touched on it, but it's very important that when you're going to take that anode rod out, Betty, prior to taking that out, you have to release the water pressure through opening your faucets. Do not use the pressure valve lever to reduce the pressure. That's not the way to do it, because you could disrupt the seating on that pressure valve and it may not work properly. So you relieve the water pressure from your faucets prior to taking that valve or that anode rod out. Otherwise, it's going to shoot out and you're going to get all wet. Okay. Somebody asked, where can I find the forum? You just go to the Facebook and look under either Roadtrek Canada or look under 74 to 94 Vintage Roadtreks. Those are what I'm talking about when I talk about the forum. They're on Facebook. Those are the two most popular ones that we use here. And a lot of this content is covered in those sessions. And there's a little queue up on the top right of your page when you go there, and you can search within the forums, do a word search to find the prior posts. There's also a file section there. Roger and Lynn Brooker from Red Rick Rover have put a lot of valuable resource information in that file, as well as some others. So it's a lot there. Okay, we're getting down near to the wind up. One last question from Gary. Go ahead, Gary, on generator.
Hi there for Chris and Jeff. How realistic is it to start your generator in a Canadian winter if the rig is outdoors, given that the carburetor is fairly lean and I don't think there's any choke setting for it? That's my first question. Second question, how much time would you guys estimate to probably remove the cover on the 210 Popular, it's a 2012, and inspect and reseal or seal the AC drip tray to make sure that no water is coming into the back of the rig over top of the bed? Go ahead.
So I'll do the roof one for you. Typically what happens is they use what they call the riv nut in the roof. And when they put the screws in to hold that air conditioner cover on, what happens is as soon as you try to break them loose, they end up coming loose in the roof itself. That's where you get that water leak, where you'll see it by the fluorescent light or right beside the two vents. So what we normally do is we'll take that off. I take those rib nuts completely out. We use a new well nut that's a rubber well nut. We put them in, we seal them, we put the cover back on and reinstall it. That typically will take 45 minutes to an hour. And then the riv nut or the well nuts, I believe, are $2 a piece. And then whatever the stainless hardware cost is.
Okay, thanks. And regarding the generator, how realistic when it's -10 outside or even -5 to start that Onan? I wonder whether you're actually, in a sense, putting more wear on it with a lot of cranking to get it going versus just like a lawnmower, leave it alone until spring.
The recommendation is actually from Onan. That's where it came from.
Yeah, but they're not based in Canada.
No, there is a Cummins guy here. I've seen him. I don't really know. I can't really address that answer. I mean, my snowblower starts in the wintertime.
Yes, but it's tuned for that. Have you ever tried starting your lawnmower in the wintertime?
Okay.
I've never mowed my snow. No, that's
the answer to that question, Gary, is yes. Exercise your generator wherever you are. That's what my own dealer told me. That's what an own service manager told me. The fact that we're in Ontario doesn't change that requirement or that recommendation.
Yeah, I just find that it's really hard to start in cold weather, even after using seafoam, as many people have recommended, and question the wear and tear on the starter and or possibly flooding the thing, which would do much more harm than good in trying to get it going during the colder winter months anyway, like January, February.
Okay, any more parting questions? We've had a really good session here. We've gone well over time, but with all of the questions and participation, it's been great to have Chris and Jeff share with us all their experience and tricks of the trade in terms of repair, maintenance, operation of Roadtreks. Just for you, Jeff and Chris, there's all sorts of accolades coming through on the chat, thanking you for your participation. Everybody's quite happy and appreciative for what you've been able to share with us this morning. And on behalf of the group and myself, thank you so much for taking the time. Also, we should acknowledge your boss, Carolyn, who's generously offered to make the two of you available. And at $125 an hour, this has been a pretty good value for the money, I would say.
For sure.
We'll suggest that some of our participants send you a box of chocolates or a fruit basket or at least a Christmas card. So thank you so much to you guys for all you do to keep road trekkers happy. And I got the impression that some of you are going to be contacted directly for further information and products and service. So I know, Jeff, I've got some work to do. I was going to leave it till spring, but maybe I should arrange to bring it over in February and have some things updated instead of me busting my knuckles on it.
Sounds good.
Thanks so much, guys. And
No
thanks,
problem.
everybody.
Thank you for having us.
My pleasure. So I'm now going to let Jeff and Chris cut loose. If they want to stay on for some chat, they're welcome to. If they've